one. This is a quick Photoshop tutorial on how to turn photos from daytime photos into nighttime photos. Quick thing to remember, this doesn't work with all photos. If you try doing a photo at the beach, you could probably make it work, but it's hard to make it look real. It looks photoshopped. The best thing to do is to have photos like this that are more overcast or morning, things like that. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do, the thing we're going to be working with the most, is our curves tool. You have the curve slider, and normally your instinct to make it nighttime would be, oh, let's bring it down. And it just looks dark. But you can tell with the color tones, it doesn't really look quite right. So what you want to do is you want to go into RGB. You want to click this, and you want to go over to red. You could start with any of the colors, but it's easier to start with red. So you'll bring it down. You want to bring it down past this lower third here. And the screen's going to look super green, and that's totally okay. Next thing you want to do is go to green, do the same thing, bring it down, and the below, you want to bring them all below the lower third. However, you want to be careful because, I mean, as you can see, this right here is the equivalent of just bringing down the slider. So if you click RGB, you can review it, and it kind of, I mean, you can't even see the red. It's so in line with the others. So what you want to do is you want to bring certain things down below others, maybe even make it a little bit above the third, but just try to get a good balance so it doesn't look like green washed or anything. This even almost looks like a bluish coastal feel, and if you look at RGB, you can tell they're a little bit separated now. Next step is you want to go back into each individual color and go around or a little bit past this third, this vertical third, and click it and bring it up just a little bit, and you'll see you can watch it changing colors in the actual photo. But you want to bring it up just a little bit here, and then you want to go to the back end and lower just a little bit, kind of like you were putting an S curve on the normal thing, but instead doing that on each individual color. And again, this you can play around with, make it look a little bit natural, more natural. Certain qualities make it look a bit more natural. So we can bring this up, down, and now you can see it looks a little bit better. Another thing you can do if you want is you can take, and now you can see it looks a little bit, it doesn't look as stratified as maybe you would hope, but it's fine. This will work just as fine. You can take the middle here, mid-tones, and just bring it down just a little bit, just a tiny bit. Okay, we're done working with curves. Next thing we want to do is bring up our hue and saturation. The best thing to do, in my opinion, is bring down the saturation. Bring down the saturation. And this photo is going to look quite dark for a bit, and that's okay. So if you bring down the saturation, you can tell now it's like black and white. So we don't want to have that. We want to have enough color, but just enough so it's not like blue, you know what I mean? So bring it down, maybe about -30, probably. And you can play around with all these afterwards to make it look right, but these are just the basic settings. So once that's done, that's all you need to do with hue and saturation. Then you bring up brightness and contrast. Brightness and contrast, bring the contrast up a little bit, just a little bit, because then things will stick out a little more starkly. Okay, so now the photo's really dark. And sometimes you can make it a little bit better, bring up the midtones a little bit more again, or bring your colors up, whatever you want to do. But from this point on, we are going to do a little bit of brushing. You're going to want to hit B, bring up your brush tool. You're going to want to have it kind of big, and you want to have the opacity at 1. You actually want to have it at 1. That's going to be the best thing. And then you're also going to want to make sure you're clicked on the mask and that you are painting with black. This way we're going to bring up the color in a little bit of areas, just a very small level, so they look a little bit illuminated. Certain things that are important, like the house, you want to make sure the field is more visible as you go on like so. And then you'll think, well, why? Because it's dark and there's nothing in the sky. Well, I have news for you. There will be a thing in the sky. The next thing you want to do is you want to pull up a picture of the moon. And you're going to want to use quick select. You can select it however you want, but this is the easiest way. The moon is very round, so this will make it a lot, like don't try to quick mask it because it'll be a headache for you. So you're fine. So once you've quick selected the whole moon, then go to lasso tool. It's important that you go to lasso tool because otherwise it doesn't quite work. Switch over to lasso tool and then go up to refine edge. Click refine edge and you want to feather it to about 9 or maybe 10. And you want to smooth it a bunch too. Smoothing isn't as apparent after the feathering. Maybe up, the contrast needs to be 0 and the shift edge can just be left there. Maybe mess around with it a little bit, but you want it to be as, you want to get it away from the edge of the moon. So you can even go to 27, it doesn't quite matter. Maybe if you smooth it just a little bit, certain things will be able to, so the moon doesn't look like you superimposed it on a photoshopped picture. The feathering just a little bit. There's a weird shadow going on here, but you don't want to do that. Sometimes you can get it to, let's see, moving back. It is feathering the entire thing. So let's see if we can't undo this layer and get it going. The edge shouldn't matter too much because your moon is going to be more or less concealed by clouds and such, so it should be fine. Just play around with it until it's not getting this, hit OK, and then so it's not getting this edge. Whether or not you feather it so it goes inward is up to you. So now you're going to move over your move tool and you're going to click the moon and you're going to literally drag it into here and drop it into here. And it's going to be gigantic. So you're going to need to Command T and make it very tiny by comparison. You can zoom back in and make it a little bit smaller, not too much because we want it to be visible, but that's definitely too big. The supermoon happened yesterday, not today. So make it a little bit smaller and you're good. Next thing you do, go over to your layers right here. You definitely, I mean, you can rename it moon if that's helpful. You can move it under the curves so it looks really dark. And then you also want to go over to this normal thing over here, this blending option. You want to click it and you want to go to screen. And this will make the moon look like that. This is not as great. So you want to take your brush and you want to go back to curves. You want to make sure you're still on 1 opacity and you're still here for painting in black. And you want to click on the moon a little bit. Now don't do this. Do not click in one spot because now you have a wonderful, and by wonderful I mean horrible effect that looks really tacky and photoshopped. So we can get rid of that real quick. Okay, so you don't want that. What you want to do at opacity 1, yes, and then, okay. What you want to do is you want to very lightly paint in sort of circles. And it's okay if you have that weird little edge in other places, like you can see it sort of around here. But that looks better because the clouds are naturally going to have that a little bit, especially if you take photos. Of this photo I did not take, sorry. But in photos like this, that's what you're going to find. Is a little bit of haziness, but just don't click in the middle. Even though I get at the moon's round, it's easy. You can make the brush a little bit rounder, and it would work otherwise. It's fine if it looks a little bit striated like this. So you want to paint, and even paint around the moon a little bit. Give it a feel. And no, you haven't brightened up the photo, but even now, the photo already feels more light, right? It feels like the moon's highlighting it a little bit. Now, from here, it's all just touch-up. There are certain things you want to make sure are really bright. This house you want to make sure is bright because it stands out. It's white in contrast with the moon. That makes sense. Certain things you can even make the landscape a little bit brighter, just for the sake of moonlight hitting it. You don't want to make it look too bright, but in this case, it's okay. The mountainside, maybe not so much. You can a little bit, but if you do, it looks, I mean, in my opinion, it looks kind of cooler and more nighttime when it's dark like that. You can zoom in if you really want to get really technical, and you can make your brush really tiny and sort of highlight some of these things, these road poles. Oops. They, because they technically are also, I think, grayish white and would receive a little bit more moonlight than we're currently giving them. Okay, and now you have your photo that should hopefully look like this, more nighttime. Give it a little bit more feel to it with this. But even you see, even that looks a little bit, it looks okay, but it's not great. So you want to sort of, if you can help it, definitely limit your painting because you don't want to make the photo all muggy. With that, you can just Command Z that out of there if you want, which is what I'm trying to do. Yeah, that looks a lot better. So, the last thing is, if you look at it, it looks kind of, I mean, the ground looks really red. It's kind of distracting. And I mean, it looks like nighttime, but they just feel like there's something missing, at least for me. So if you go back into your curves, double click it, and go to RGB, if you go to green and you take this little dot right here, bring it up just a little bit. Not too much, because if you bring it up too much, the sky looks green. Bring it up just a little bit, maybe bring it over to the side, to the right, I mean, sort of along this lower horizontal third. But again, not too much. There, and then bring it up just a little bit. The sky looks a little bit greener, and that's maybe, that's a personal thing. I think it looks more like nighttime that way. The wonderful thing about doing day to night photos is there's so much room for messing with it, what you think is night. You don't have to have the moon in there. You can get rid of the moon. Well, I mean, that's going to be there because of the curves, but you can get rid of the moon. You can make everything look super dark if you think, rural house in the country is a little bit more, should be a little bit darker. That's fine. But the basic way to make it nighttime is to play around with the levels a little bit, just so as to make it look like it's nighttime. Very important to mess with the saturation too. It seems like it didn't do a whole lot, but watch what happens if we take off all the layers. You've got this. If you throw on the contrast, it's good because now the whole sky area is a little bit more defined. The saturation you got to bring down because otherwise this is like glaring at you. Throw the moon in there, throw the curves. If you do this, with this desaturation, the saturation is mostly to help with the red down here, but if you look at the sky gets even greener, and this whole thing looks blue. It doesn't quite look like nighttime, at least to me. So, play around with it. You can even take it and mess with the saturation a little bit more, bring it down just a little bit if you want to give it that like horror movie feel to it. Make it really low in saturation and make it look very creepy. You can take that, you can make the moon even brighter. Even brighter. Just for that creepy feel. And maybe you like the halo, maybe you like the circle halo effect. But There's so many different ways to mess with this to make it look like nighttime. You make it super bright, make the moon like the focus of the photo. You might want to make it smaller if you're doing this, but make this a little bit brighter. And there you have it. Your day photo has progressively gone from nice home in Iceland, in the, you know, rural parts of Iceland, to a nice, creepy evening. Um, yeah, try it out. See what you think. Add some of your own spins on it, and I'd love to see what it turns out as. And again, you can do this with any photo probably, but like things like beach photos, things with big blue oceans and really bright sand are a little bit harder to work with. But if you can, I'd love to know. Please show me, and that would be really cool to work on that. So, best of luck to you.